P2 and SP1. Does any board member want to pull either of those? Seeing none, we need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion by Vice Chairman Shaw, seconded by Dr. Robinson. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Superintendent, that'll take us to COS 1.
Yes, sir. COS 1, I recommend the board approve adoption of the final order in the matter of School District of Palm Beach County versus William Latson.
Motion? Motion by Vice Chairman Shaw, seconded by Mrs. Whitfield. Ms. Brill, I understand you pulled this?
I did, thank you, and I'm taking off my mask so that everybody can hear me, especially Dr. Latson, wherever everybody is. This matter should have never been allowed to evolve the way it did. You are fortunate, Dr. Latson, that the school district was inept in the way in which they conducted the investigation and the way in which it was presented to the judge. You have already been tried and convicted in the eyes of the public, and that is something you will carry with you for the remainder of your career. The judge's recommended order, I repeat, recommended order, states, this entire mess would have been avoided had Dr. Latson done two things. One, chosen his words more carefully so that rather than giving any credence to Holocaust deniers, he would have stated that he personally believes the Holocaust is a historical fact, but understands that in today's world there are people who refuse to believe what is right before their eyes as facts. And two, simply not blamed the offended parent for his poorly chosen method of communicating, his quote-unquote neutrality regarding some people's beliefs that the Holocaust never occurred. Had he done these two things, the issue of the telephone calls not being returned would have never occurred. I hope you understand, Dr. Latson, that this is on you and that you finally take accountability for your words and your actions. On behalf of the 17 million people who died in the Holocaust, 17 million, the 6 million Jews, the 11 million others, consisting of roughly 5.7 million Soviet civilians, nearly 3 million Soviet POWs, around 1.8 million non-Jewish Poles, 312,000 Serb civilians, up to 25,000 disabled individuals, up to 220,000 Roma, around 1,900 Jehovah's Witnesses, and at least 70,000 criminals and asocials, 5,000 to 15,000 homosexuals, and an unknown number of Nazi political opponents. I will not support the judge's and superintendent's recommendation. Frankly, I am appalled that this board would be asked to entertain allowing Dr. Latson to return to the school district of Palm Beach County in any capacity. Thank you.
Board members, I direct your attention to finding number 43 of the DOA judge's final order, which states, and I quote, "In his email to the complaining parent, Dr. Latson wrote that he could not, as a school district employee, say the Holocaust is a factual historical event." I direct your attention to the judge's finding number 5, which cites section 1.1003.42 Florida statute, which says in part, members of the instructional staff of the public schools, subject to rules of the State Board of Education and the District School Board, shall teach efficiently and faithfully the following. Subparagraph G, the history of the Holocaust, the systemic planned annihilation of European Jews and other groups by Nazi Germany, a watershed event in the history of humanity, to be taught in a manner that leads to an investigation of human behavior and understanding of the ramifications of prejudice, racism, and stereotyping, and an examination of what it means to be a responsible and respectful person for the purposes of encouraging tolerance of diversity in a pluralistic society and for nurturing and protecting democratic values and institutions. We also have School Board Policy 2.09, which cites to the statute and requires the history of the Holocaust to be taught in our schools. Dr. Latson, as a long-standing administrator with years of experience in complying with both statutory requirements governing public education, as well as school board policies, certainly should have known that it was outrageous for him to claim his employment as a school district employee precluded him from confirming the Holocaust to be a factual historical event. I can only assume that if it was one of the students in his high school, rather than a parent, who asked him if the Holocaust actually occurred, Dr. Latson would have given the same response, since Dr. Latson believes as a school district employee, he is precluded from telling the truth, that the Holocaust is a factual historical event, clearly a violation of both Florida law and board policy. Dr. Latson should have known that his statement would cause local, national, and international anger and condemnation, ridicule of the Palm Beach County School District in general, and Spanish River High School in particular, which in fact it did. The DOE judge himself said in finding 50 that through his actions, Dr. Latson caused a great number of people to doubt the commitment of the district to honor the mandate that the student will be taught that history is not opinion or belief, and that the Holocaust did occur. To make matters worse, if matters could be worse, the judge wrote, even after Dr. Latson made no effort to contact Oswald before noon on July 8, 2019, the district did not move to terminate him. He was reassigned. Not until Dr. Latson made clear that he had been misinterpreted in his neutrality statements to the complaining parent, and it was clear to the district personnel involved that he was not walking back those statements, did Fenoy conclude that Dr. Latson's employment was incompatible with the district's commitment to teach the Holocaust. The weekend Dr. Latson's comments first became known to the world and to those of us on the school board, I, as board chairman, fielded questions and heard critical comments from not only CNN, Fox News, and nearly every other major news outlet in the United States, but news media as far away as England, Australia, South Africa, Israel, Italy, and Canada. Congressman Deutsch's office indicated that Congressman Deutsch, who happened to be in Israel at that time, had to face questioning from the Israeli prime minister as to why the congressman's own school district would engage in such conduct. For all the reasons I stated, I will certainly not vote to reinstate Dr. Latson, and I don't believe he should be anywhere in the Palm Beach County School District, or for that matter, any other school district in the United States. Any other comments? Mrs. Whitfield.
Thank you. I just wanted to share with the public how much I've been struggling with this, and my frustration and my disappointment in the administrative law judge's ruling. I have felt during this time, I mean, Dr. Latson, you heard, I hope you're listening to your community. That's your community that just came out and said how hurt they are. And I do think you have a responsibility to them and to us. Obviously, we voted to terminate Dr. Latson because we believed that he was inappropriate, and I voted because I believed in basis was insubordination. But the administrative law judge specifically said that he did not believe that his misconduct in office was incompetence or gross insubordination, which would be needed. We, as a board, have really been taking away a lot of our power in this possibility of stopping him from coming back to the school district. I think it's unfair to the school district to have to continue on this. But what I want to say to the community, no matter how this vote goes today, is that this does not represent the school district of Palm Beach County. We believe that the Holocaust happened. I believe it was a tragedy, and I believe that any representation of this school district not representing it as a global altering tragedy is inaccurate. And so I want to tell everyone out there that he will not, even if he is reinstated to a position, he will not be reinstated to that position. He will not be over Spanish River or over a high school, I have been assured by staff. So however we vote today, I do not think he will be in a position where he will have access to our children or in any of those issues. And I do think we need, as a community, to realize that this is a stain on our community, and it does not represent us as a whole. Thank you.
Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you. This is a sad day within the Palm Beach County School District. I think this could have been handled differently. The investigative process could have been handled differently. When it became known to me, it was late in this process. And this is why we have leadership here through our superintendent, and our executives to work closely with our employees. Mistakes were made. It's obvious mistakes were made by Mr. Latson. I think mistakes were made by our administrators in not handling this whole situation in a better way. We know that the Holocaust existed. We know that slavery existed, and it's bad. So many people lost their lives. I'm sad sitting here to talk about this as a school district when we're here to teach our children our history and never forget, but never to deny what our history is. Having worked in human resources all those years, and I looked at the administrative law judge, I read this packet over and over again. But right from the beginning, we in Palm Beach County School District, we have progressive discipline. And this is an objective person, this judge, who indicated by looking at all of the facts from the school district and the facts from Mr. Latson. And he said it did not warrant a suspension or termination, that we as a school district didn't even use our own progressive discipline. The most this conduct, the conduct that he did, based on what was presented to the administrative law judge as it related to insubordination and all those other things, the main issue wasn't even the Holocaust as we went forth for his termination from the school district. It was all of these other issues: incompetence, misconduct, gross insubordination. I don't see anything in here as it relates to the Holocaust. But we recognize that the principal made some very bad mistakes in saying what he said. I know William Latson. I know him very well. He worked for me right here in Human Resources, and he was a good employee. And it can be told by the stories and what was said in this investigation. I know Dr. Marlin, who was the former superintendent of Palm Beach County School District. He knows William Latson. And when we look at this whole totality of all of this confusion here, I think the district could have handled this better. But we're at a point where we sent it out and we paid to have it investigated objectively. And the administrative law judge came back and said progressive discipline was not used here. And at this point in time, he was more deserving of maybe a verbal or a written reprimand, but not a suspension and a termination. And that's what we got out of all of this investigation and taking it to the state level. But I wish it could have been handled right here. More training, more support for our employees, because they too make mistakes. I know, Mr. Barbier, and I hear you, Ms. Brill, it's bad stuff that happened with him saying this and back and forth, but we have to train our people to help them to know that they must be better. But we can't, after we do all that we said we were going to do by looking at this objectively and sending it to the next level, which is for all of us a point when you're accused that you have an opportunity to state your case, and the district stated its case, as well as Mr. Latson, to an objective judge. And he's come back to say to Palm Beach County School District that you didn't even use your own progressive discipline and you overreached. Thank you.
Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. I actually want to agree with most of what my colleagues said. I really cannot find the words to describe how much of a mess I think this is. I do think that Mr. Latson or Dr. Latson has truly has some blame in this, but I think that there were so many missteps in this, which I'm not going to list, but I just think it was very poorly handled once it hit the press. I don't believe in governing by applause, but after it hit the press, it blew out of control. There were things that had been done to try to respond to these very, very stupid and inappropriate comments. And that I thought appeared to be appropriate, right? The judge said it very well. I can't stress enough how, I just have no word better than stupid and inappropriate the comments were, and especially when taken out of the totality of the context. It really sounded to me all the time that he was trying to bend over backwards to accommodate somebody, I'm not sure who. But I was particularly offended, as has been stated by some of my colleagues, that his comments suggested that Palm Beach County School District's stance on the Holocaust was vague. So as my colleagues have said, let's be crystal clear. We know the Holocaust occurred, right? And we ensure that our students learn never again. In fact, each of my sons learned about the Holocaust in Palm Beach County Public Schools. And our efforts have continued to grow and since that time in terms of educating our students. We got many emails, you've heard the many phone calls. One person said that Dr. Latson was not willing to educate students about the Holocaust. Well, from everything that I learned after these events started to spiral out of control, Spanish River actually, under his leadership, probably did more education around Holocaust than any other school. So that's not true. Multiple speakers said that he should be educated, right? And it's my understanding that he did take some efforts to educate himself after making these just ridiculous comments, right? So I also spoke to multiple members of the Spanish River school community and some leaders in the Jewish community last year who had had positive experiences with Dr. Latson. So I'm not defending his stupid statements, trust me. They actually disgust me, but I don't think his statements represent the body of his work. I would like to join the voices. If I thought he was a Holocaust denier, I would join my voice with those that we've heard that would essentially banish him to the ends of the earth, but his body of work has not shown that. This episode, though, does point out to me that our teaching and learning department needs to double down on transforming our curriculum to make sure that all of our students learn all of our stories. And guess what? In that process, we need to make sure all of our staff does too. So no matter what the vote is on this item, it's my request that Dr. Latson publicly apologize for his reckless and offensive statements. I think that is the least he can do. Thank you.
Ms. Brewer.
Thank you, and thank you, Dr. Robinson. Good luck with that, though, because I think that there's a level of arrogance that will prohibit that ever happening. What I will say is that, yes, Spanish River did have more opportunities, but the fact that the principal would not enforce students attending those opportunities, letting students opt out, would a student opt out of math? Would they opt out of Black history? You can't opt out of things that are supposed to be taught in the curriculum. So that's number one. I will tell you that there are people sitting in this room who knew about this for months before the press got it. We know that. And those people are going to need to be held, to at least, well, I think they understand where they went wrong, but there are people that knew that. As far as what Mr. Barbieri said, and he put it very well said, I was in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea when the news broke. I was on a cruise. I was in Greece. I was in Turkey. My phone did not stop ringing with the media, with Senator Rader, with Representative Polsky. So the fact that phone calls weren't returned when I was sitting in the middle of an ocean, getting phone calls and returning them is just not acceptable. So you all know how I feel. It's very unfortunate. I don't wish anybody harm. I just think that if we rehire Dr. Latson, it is going to be a stain on this school district that will never go away. And it's not just a local stain in Palm Beach County, it's a national stain. And that's something that we all need to be accountable for on this dais.
Mr. Shaw.
Thank you very much. I want to agree with what Mrs. Brill and Mr. Barbieri said. I also want to agree with what Mrs. Andrews said, Mrs. Whitfield, and Dr. Robinson, because I don't believe there's a single person sitting up here tonight that's comfortable with having to deal with this, because it's absolutely something that should never have ever happened in this school district. I think that if we put a perspective on it, there's several things. I think Dr. Robinson's point that the media took over this entire conversation before the superintendent had an opportunity to even begin to address this, and because there were lots of missteps that were there, that it took a life of its own. And that's unfortunate, because I think that's our world today. I do think that it's unfortunate also that we're sitting here tonight talking about 1 out of 170 some principals and 13 or 14,000 teachers in this county, that if we looked at all of the efforts that are being put forth in this district to address the curriculum and the Holocaust, we'd find there are a lot of people out there who are doing an amazing job, who are working hard to make sure that this message has been carried throughout every single student's curriculum in this county. When I visited the Holocaust Museum, the first time I was there, it was with one of the safety patrol trips. Nobody's talked about the fact that every safety patrol trip that goes on in this county, the students from this county visit the Holocaust Museum as one of the first stops that they take. Nobody's talked about the efforts that our curriculum department and our Holocaust Studies department have been making in providing an adequate program for our students. Can we do better? Absolutely. Can we do better on equity? Absolutely. Are there things that we make mistakes on? Absolutely. My decision tonight is going to be based on partly a practicality issue. The reality from that judge's order, and Mrs. Andrews read from it, made it pretty clear that if we decide tonight that we are not going to accept the hearing officer's final order, we're likely going to have it appealed and end up in court, and 6 or 7 or 8 months from now, we'll be right back here with a new settlement issue that we have. We also have the reality that Dr. Latson has a 3-year contract as a principal. There is an obligation that this district has to deal with that. It puts us as a board making the policy decisions in a difficult position. But unfortunately, we are in that position, and we've got to make decisions. Every one of those speakers that spoke tonight, my heart broke for them. To hear those stories from people who actually experienced the Holocaust through their families, and they had to say things to us because we did not do our job up front. And because sometimes, unfortunately, in the public sector, we set our standards for employees based upon the lowest performing employees of an organization. And I hope that at some point in time, this school district and every public agency throughout this country is at a position that we do not set our standards based upon the lowest performing employees, that we have our standards based upon the highest performing employers, our employees. If we do that, we won't be addressing this kind of issue as often as we have tonight.
Dr. Robinson, I appreciate your comments with respect to him apologizing, but again, I'll turn you back to the judge's final order. He was given the chance. In fact, I remember that Mr. Oswald told me on the morning of July 8th that he told Dr. Latson no more comments anywhere, and Dr. Latson sent an email blaming the parent and saying that he had the opportunity to make things better, and instead he just threw gasoline on a fire that was burning throughout the entire world, especially in my district. He had the opportunity to fix that, and he didn't do it. He dug in his heels and he said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to take it back. I can stay neutral. I don't have to, tell people that that the Holocaust existed. I don't have to do that as a school district employee. So he had ample opportunity to fix this as well as he could fix it at the time. Instead, he made it worse. So again, as I said before, I will not support him. He had the opportunity to make things better and he didn't do it. Not to mention the fact that, that as a school district employee, how can he possibly take the position that he's got to remain neutral in teaching the Holocaust? It's in our statutes, it's in our board policies. If there's no further discussion, we'll take a vote on the motion. All in favor of terminating Dr. Latson? Or, I'm sorry, all in favor of approving the recommendation of the superintendent to adopt the final order? Opposed? Motion went 4-3 with Barbieri, Whitfield, and Brill in opposition. Motion carries 4-3. Next item on the agenda is P1, Mr. Superintendent.
I recommend the board approve the personnel agenda as amended.
Motion by Mrs. Andrews, second by Vice Chairman Shaw. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. I had put there's a board discussion. I'm sorry. Ms. Brill, your first additional lobbying item for state and federal platforms.